I pushed through the back door of the Marigold room 10 minutes late, with my right shoe broken, my coat damp from the cold, and my heart already tired before the shift had even begun. The restaurant was one of those expensive Italian places where the candles were real, the flowers were fresh, and the staff were expected to look invisible unless a rich guest needed something. I had worked there for exactly 3 months and 2 days, long enough to know which corners had cameras, which guests never said thank you, and which managers enjoyed hurting people when no one important was watching. "Lily Bennett, where have you been?" Victor Hale snapped before I even reached the staff lockers. Victor was the floor manager, a thin, sharp-faced man in a tight black vest who held his clipboard like it gave him permission to decide who deserved dignity. Usually when he insulted me, he took his time. He liked an audience. He liked looking first at whatever was wrong with me that day, then at my body, then at my face, as if my face was the last thing worth noticing. Tonight, his eyes went straight to the tape wrapped around my broken shoe, but his cruelty came faster than usual, sharper, almost nervous. "My shoe broke 3 blocks from here," I said, holding my canvas bag against my side. "I came as fast as I could." "Your problems are not the restaurant's problems," he said, loud enough for the kitchen to hear. A cook looked down. The dishwasher stopped moving plates for a second. Bianca Russo stood by the espresso machine with her arms folded. Bianca was polished, graceful, and trusted with the kind of guests Victor thought a woman like me should never serve. Normally, when Victor embarrassed me, Bianca smiled like she was relieved it was not her turn. Tonight she looked away. That was the first sign that something was wrong. Victor was not only angry, he was afraid. "Maria called in sick," he said. My fingers tightened around my bag. Maria was the only waitress trusted upstairs in the private room. The rest of us only went there to carry clean glasses, extra forks, or instructions to forget whatever we heard. "Who has the Marigold suite?" I asked. Victor's jaw tightened. "Bianca has wine. You have coffee." I stared at him. "Me? Do not look proud. You are not being chosen. You are what I have left." His eyes dropped again to my shoe. "And tonight, what I have left may be enough to ruin me." That was the second sign. Victor never admitted weakness. He stepped closer and lowered his voice. "You will pour coffee, refill cups, keep your eyes down, and leave that room without making one person remember your name. One spill, one stupid question, one nervous look at the wrong man, and you will never work in a decent restaurant in Chicago again." "Who is upstairs?" I asked. For the first time since I had known him, Victor's fear looked bigger than his cruelty. "Jack Moretti," he said. The name changed the kitchen. The cook moved quieter. Bianca lowered her eyes. Even the dishwasher stopped pretending not to listen. Jack Moretti did not come to restaurants for dinner. He came when rooms needed to be closed, phones collected, and powerful men needed privacy for things no one would repeat later. Victor shoved a clean black apron into my hands. "Fix your face before you go upstairs. Men like that do not like sad waitresses." I tied the apron around my waist. It pulled across my stomach because every uniform Victor ordered for me seemed made for someone smaller, someone he would have preferred to display. He noticed. Of course he noticed. Men like Victor always noticed the parts of a woman they could turn into a weapon. I had heard comments about my body from customers, from strangers, from my ex-husband Ethan after our child was born, and from my own father when I had nowhere else to go. So Victor was not original. He was only another man using old words with fresh confidence. My phone buzzed inside my bag. Ruth's message appeared on the screen. "He's asleep. Still says his robot needs that little silver piece." Ruth was Ethan's mother, but she had chosen truth over blood. She watched my child on late shifts, not because she pitied me, but because she loved him and had never forgiven her son for walking away from us. My little boy loved broken things. Cheap robots from thrift stores, cars with missing wheels, tiny metal arms that clicked but did not move. He believed every broken thing only needed the right small piece and enough patience. Maybe that was why I had learned to notice details other people ignored. A tiny missing piece could stop an entire machine. Victor snapped his fingers. "Are you listening?" I slipped the phone away. "Yes, then move." I looked at him. "Then it is good I am only serving coffee." His mouth tightened, but the phone beside the reservation screen rang before he could answer. He grabbed it. "Yes, sir. She is here now, no, sir. No problem. The Marigold suite is ready." He listened, and the color drained from his face. Of course. Then he hung up and pointed toward the back stairs. Go, so I went. Not because Victor owned me, not because his threats had broken me, but because my child was asleep 2 blocks away with a woman who had chosen love over pride, and because survival had taught me that sometimes obedience was only a mask you wore until you found the right moment to take it off. The Marigold suite looked less like a dining room and more like a courtroom pretending to be elegant. A long table stood beneath soft lights. The white cloth had no wrinkles. Crystal glasses sat in exact rows. Low flowers filled the center so no man's view would be blocked. 2 service doors led back toward the kitchen hall. One main stair went down to the public floor. A narrow east corridor led toward an old private exit. The one staff were told never to use unless ordered. Everything looked too clean, too measured, too prepared. On the sideboard sat a narrow black case. A lawyer opened it just enough for me to see a silver signing pen inside, then closed it again. No one touches this except the signers, he told Victor. This is the official verification pen. It confirms the signature and stores the signing record. If this agreement is challenged later, this pen proves the signing process was clean. Victor nodded too quickly. Everything is under control. The lawyer's eyes narrowed. The verification piece inside that pen must stay intact. If it is damaged or missing, the record can be reviewed. Understood, Victor said. But his eyes moved toward the east corridor before they returned to the case. I noticed the pen because Victor kept looking at it. I noticed the east corridor because Victor kept looking there too. I noticed the restaurant security guard near that corridor because he would not look anyone directly in the eye. Maybe I noticed too much. Maybe that was what men later hated most about me. But when you spend your life being ignored, you learn to study the rooms that ignore you. Rocco arrived first from Jack Moretti's side. He was broad, quiet, and hard-eyed. The kind of man who did not waste movement, because wasting movement meant giving enemies extra seconds. He checked the windows, mirrors, service doors, main stair, east corridor, sideboard guards, and every person in the room. When his eyes passed over me, I saw his quick decision. Waitress. Coffee service. No threat, he moved on. That was fine. Being underestimated was sometimes the only privacy I had. Then Marco Voss entered. I knew him before anyone said his name because the room softened around him. He was older than Jack by several years, with silver at his temples and a calm smile that made nervous people breathe easier. Everyone knew the story. Marco's father had died saving Jack Moretti when Jack was young. After that, the Moretti family raised Marco almost like blood. Jack called him brother. The city called him trusted. Marco crossed the room and rested 2 fingers on the black pen case. Victor did not stop him. He should have. The lawyer had said no one touched it except the signers. Marco's touch lasted only a second, casual enough to look harmless, but his eyes moved once toward the head chair before he looked away. It was a small thing. Most people would miss it. Rocco did not. I saw his jaw shift. Marco saw me watching and smiled. Coffee service? He asked. Yes, sir. Good, he said. Quiet hands make quiet nights. I did not know why that sounded like a warning. At 8:41, the room changed before Jack Moretti walked in. Guards straightened. The judge stopped speaking. Bianca adjusted her posture near the wine station. Victor stopped moving completely. Then Jack entered. He wore a black suit, a black shirt, and no tie. He was not the biggest man in the room, and he did not need to be. Some men filled a room with noise. Jack Moretti filled it with silence. He looked once around the room, exits, guards, judge, lawyers, Enzo's empty side of the table, Marco, Victor, Bianca, then me. Only 1 second, maybe less, but Victor saw it and hated me for it. Jack stopped near my coffee station. Everyone stopped when I walked in, he said. You didn't. I looked at the cup in my hand. The cup still needed setting out. Bianca's eyes widened. Victor looked like he might faint. Rocco looked at me again, more carefully this time. Jack did not smile. Do you always answer like that? Only when I am asked directly. His eyes stayed on mine. They were controlled, not warm, not soft, but awake in a way most men's eyes were not when they looked at me. He was not looking at me the way men like Victor looked at me. He was not measuring how much space I took. He was looking at my hands, the cups, the table, the way I had turned every handle toward the person who would reach for it without needing to look down. He noticed steadiness before he noticed anything else. "Careful," he said. I placed the cup down, with the handle turned toward the chair. "I am. That is why nothing has spilled." Something almost moved across his face. Not amusement, exactly. Interest. Not because I was pretty. Not because I was delicate. Not because I was trying to impress him. Because my hands did not shake in a room where everyone expected me to disappear. Then Marco stepped close and said something low. Jack's gaze stayed on me 1 second longer than it should have before he went to his seat. 5 minutes later, Enzo Rinaldi arrived with his men, and even I understood the danger then. This was not dinner. It was a peace meeting. The Moretti side and the Rinaldi side had been fighting over docks, warehouses, and routes that kept half the city moving. The lawyers called it logistics. The guards called it territory. Ordinary people would have called it work. Because if those men went to war, it would not only be mafia soldiers who paid. Dock workers, drivers, security men, cousins, sons, and families would wake up inside a battle they had not chosen. I poured coffee and stayed quiet. The judge began reading the agreement. Dock Route A, Dock Route B, shared inspection, neutral storage, emergency authority. The words sounded dry, but I knew dry words could hide sharp teeth. Poor people live under contracts, too. Rent contracts. Payment plans, late fees, warnings in small print. We know how one harmless sentence can become a trap. Then the judge read the emergency clause. In the event of sudden leadership incapacity before final ratification, temporary stabilizing authority over the affected party's dock security routes shall pass to the named trustee. Jack's face changed slightly. Named trustee? The judge swallowed. For the Moretti side, Marco Voss. Enzo smiled across the table. Your brother becomes neutral now? Marco smiled back, but again it did not reach his eyes. Neutral enough to keep your men from turning confusion into opportunity. Jack looked at Marco. You approved this language? Marco's voice softened. Your father's old structure. If anything happens, someone trusted holds the line until succession is settled. That is all. Jack watched him for a moment. There was trust in his face, but not blindness. Continue, he said. I poured for the judge, then the lawyers, then Enzo's side, then Jack's. When I reached Jack, he glanced at the pot. Still nothing spilled, he said quietly. I filled his cup without touching the rim. For now, sir. Marco looked at me. She talks more than most coffee girls. Jack looked at the cup, then at my hands. Her hands are steady. I lowered my eyes and moved away, but the word followed me. Steady. No one at the Marigold Room described me that way. Victor described me as late, slow, heavy, not polished enough. Ethan had once described my body as something he had to tolerate. My father had told me I would have to learn to be useful if I could not be beautiful. Steady sounded like a word from a place where no one had measured my worth by how little space I took up. The first course passed. The room stayed quiet in a trained way. Bianca moved through the men with wine, graceful and careful. I stayed near the coffee station. Victor kept checking the pen case. Marco kept speaking softly to Jack. The restaurant security guard near the east corridor kept shifting his weight. Then Victor snapped his fingers at me. Reserve napkins. Service hall. Now. I picked up the empty linen basket and went through the side service door. The corridor behind the suite was cool and narrow, lined with shelves, wine crates, spare linens, and cleaning supplies. The east hallway branched off near a small alcove before turning toward the old private exit. I found the sealed napkins on a lower rack and bent to pull them free. That was when I heard Marco's voice. After he signs. My hand froze. Victor answered him. 20 seconds. No sooner. A third man spoke, low and rough. Rocco? Blocked at the main stair, Marco said. The alarm pushes everyone off balance. Jack goes east. I take him the rest of the way. Victor whispered. And the pen? The signature only has to look clean long enough, Marco said. Once he is dead, the clause does the rest. The rough voice asked, Rinaldi takes the blame? Marco's answer came calm and easy. Of course. That is the point. I did not breathe. I did not need every detail. Jack Moretti was supposed to sign. A fake kitchen alarm would throw the room into confusion. Rocco would be blocked. Victor would send Jack through the east corridor. Marco would lead him into the blind corner. Jack would die before the agreement could be challenged. Rinaldi would be blamed. Marco would step into temporary control of the docks under the emergency clause. Temporary was a word powerful men used when they wanted something permanent, but did not want to say it aloud. Then Victor said, "And the waitress?" My fingers tightened around the napkins. Marco paused. "Which one?" "The heavy one. Coffee service. She watches too much." Heat rose in my face. For 1 second, I wanted to disappear so badly it felt like pain. Marco sounded almost bored when he answered. "No one listens to women who serve coffee." The words did not just insult me. They explained the whole room. The guards, the lawyers, the managers, the men at the table, all of them believed service made a person less real. They believed if I heard something, it still did not count as knowledge. I shifted too quickly. The napkin pack hit the shelf. The sound was small, but in that corridor it felt huge. "Who's there?" The rough voice snapped. I stood with the napkins against my chest and stepped into view. Victor stared at me too long. Marco looked at the napkins, then my face, then my hands. "Lily, isn't it?" he asked. I hated that he knew my name. "Yes, sir." Victor's eyes were sharp. "How long were you there?" I looked at him the way waitresses look at men who expect service, not truth. "Long enough to find the napkins." Marco smiled. That was worse than anger. "Then go back in," he said, "and move carefully." I lowered my eyes because men like Marco trusted lowered eyes. They mistook them for surrender. Then I returned to the private room with the napkins in my arms and a murder plan sitting behind my teeth. I could have left. The thought came fast and ugly. I could have gone down the back stairs, taken off the apron, and walked into the cold. Jack Moretti was not my friend. He was not innocent in any simple way. Men did not fear his name because he handed out kindness. But this was not only about Jack. If Marco killed him and blamed Rinaldi, the city would bleed by morning. Men who had never sat at that table would die for a lie spoken inside it. And if Victor decided the coffee girl had heard too much, I might disappear before anyone noticed I was missing. I looked at Jack across the room. He sat beside the man who was about to lead him to his death. His brother, his trusted man, the son of the man who had once saved him. How do you warn a man like that when the enemy is sitting close enough to touch his sleeve? I could not walk to his chair and whisper murder in front of Marco. I could not tell Rocco without Victor stopping me. I could not shout. I could not run to the police. I had one advantage. They believed I was careless. They believed I was invisible. They believed coffee was the only thing I carried. The judge turned another page. Enzo had already signed. The black case was opened. The silver pen lay near Jack's right hand. The lawyer had explained it clearly enough earlier. That pen did not just write. It verified the official signing record. If the process stayed clean, Marco's emergency clause could stand long enough to give him power. I picked up the coffee pot and tray. My burned pride, my aching foot, my fear, all of it narrowed into one decision. I walked toward Jack. "Coffee, sir?" Jack did not look up. "No." His hand moved toward the paper. I shifted the tray as if making room to pass behind his chair. My right foot dragged half an inch, just enough to make me stumble. The cup slid. Coffee spilled across Jack Moretti's black sleeve, over the edge of the contract, and into the open pen case. The room exploded in gasps. Hot coffee splashed my wrist too, sharp enough to steal my breath. But I forced the pain down. If I cried out, the room would look at my burn. I needed them looking at my mistake. "I'm sorry," I said quickly, letting panic enter my voice. "I'm so sorry, sir." I slipped. Victor's face went red. "You stupid girl!" Bianca took one step forward, saw Victor's face, and stopped. The judge half stood. Enzo leaned back with dangerous amusement. Marco did not look at the coffee. He looked at me. Jack lifted his wet sleeve slowly. Most of the heat had hit the suit. My wrist had taken what was left. I kept it hidden beneath the towel on my arm. "I'll clean it," I said. "Please forgive me. I didn't mean to." Jack looked at my mouth first, then my eyes. My mouth begged forgiveness. My eyes begged him to live. For 1 second, everything else in the room disappeared. He looked at the coffee on the pen case, then at my hidden wrist, then back at my eyes. Something in his face changed. Not belief, not yet, but attention. He had already noticed my steady hands. Now he noticed the spill was too perfectly timed to be ordinary clumsiness, and too painful to be vanity. Victor stepped forward. "Mr. Moretti, I will remove her immediately." Jack stood. "No." Victor froze. "Sir?" Jack took off his jacket. Cleaning lounge. Victor nodded too fast. Of course. Bianca can take your jacket and... Her, Jack said. The room went quiet. She made the mess. She cleans it. Victor looked trapped between anger and obedience. He shoved a towel and stain bottle into my hands. As he did, his eyes dropped to my tray. Something small and metallic had slid beneath the wet napkin near the edge of the saucer. I had not noticed it. Victor had. His face changed so quickly that I almost missed it. The piece was no bigger than something from one of my little boy's broken robots. A tiny silver part with ridges along its side. The kind of thing most people would sweep away without understanding that a whole machine could fail without it. Victor looked at it like it could destroy him. Then Jack moved, and everyone else moved with him. I followed him out of the room with the towel, the stain bottle, and the tray still in my hands. I did not know what the small metal piece was. I only knew Victor wanted it. The cleaning lounge was narrow, with a sink, spare jackets, folded towels, a cracked mirror, and a shelf of stain remover. Rocco came in behind us and shut the door. Jack removed his jacket and placed it on the counter. His cuff was wet, but his skin was not burned. Mine was. I kept my wrist low. "Leave the towel," Jack said. I did not move. His eyes sharpened. I said, "Leave it." "If you sign that paper and follow Marco through the East Hall," I said, "you will die tonight." Rocco's hand moved inside his jacket. Jack lifted one hand, stopping him without looking away from me. "Say that again." So I did. Fast, plain, no drama. "After you sign, the kitchen alarm goes off. Rocco gets blocked at the main stair. Victor sends you east. Marco touches your shoulder and tells you he knows the route. Rinaldi takes the blame." Jack said nothing. Rocco's face hardened. "Who told you that?" "No one. They thought no one was listening." Jack's voice was low. "Marco is my brother." "Then your brother knows exactly which hallway has the blind corner." The words landed hard. Jack's face did not show pain the way ordinary men showed pain, but something in his eyes went colder. "Do you understand what you are accusing him of?" "Yes," I said. "That is why I am saying it now. You heard voices in a service hall during a private signing. I heard enough. Or you heard pieces and built a story around fear." The words hit harder than I expected. "Then test it," I said. "If I'm wrong, nothing happens. I'm just the waitress who ruined your sleeve. If I am right, the alarm will come. Victor will send you east, and Marco will put his hand on your shoulder." Jack looked at me for a long second. His face gave me nothing. No belief, no promise, no protection. Only the cold wall of a man who had just been asked to imagine his brother as his murderer. Then he looked once at Rocco, too quickly for me to understand, and turned back to the door. "Stay behind me," he said. That was all. Not "I believe you," not "you saved my life," not even "thank you." Only stay behind me, like I was still just part of the mess he had to clean. I followed him back into the Marigold suite with the ruined jacket, the towel, and the tray still in my hands. I still did not know that the tiny piece from the pen case was under the wet napkin. I only knew Victor's eyes kept dropping to my tray like the tray itself had become dangerous. Marco looked up with a smooth face. The judge hovered over the damp edge of the contract. Enzo looked entertained enough to be dangerous. "Problem solved?" Marco asked. Jack did not answer him. He turned to Victor first. "Fire her." For 1 second, I forgot how to breathe. Victor blinked. "Sir?" "The waitress," Jack said. "Fire her, now!" The room went quiet. My fingers tightened around the tray. I had told him the truth. I had burned my own wrist to get him alone. I had said the words no one else dared to say. And he had looked at me, heard me, and chosen his brother anyway. Victor's relief spread across his face. Marco's shoulders relaxed almost invisibly. To them, Jack looked angry, insulted, and still blind. To me, he looked like a man walking calmly toward his own death. Victor grabbed my arm. "You heard him," he whispered. "Move." I looked back once as Jack sat at the table. The judge looked at the damaged official pen case. "The verification pen is compromised," he said nervously. Marco's voice stayed smooth. "Use the backup pen. The signatures are what matter." The lawyer beside the judge hesitated. "The verification piece from the original pen must be recovered for the record. Without it, the signing process may require review." Marco's eyes moved once toward Victor. Victor's fingers tightened on my arm. I still did not understand why, but I understood one thing clearly. The small thing under the wet napkin mattered. The judge placed the agreement in front of Jack. Marco leaned close. "One signature," he said softly. "Then we can all breathe." Jack picked up the backup pen. My chest tightened. No, I thought. Please don't. But he signed. And in that moment, I believed I had failed. 20 seconds later, the kitchen alarm screamed. A waiter shouted from below. Someone yelled about smoke near the ovens. One lawyer knocked over a glass. Enzo's guards moved. Jack's guards moved. Too many bodies shifted at once. Rocco stepped toward me, but 2 restaurant security men rushed into his path carrying fire extinguishers they did not need. "Main stair is blocked," one of them shouted. Victor dragged me toward the service door. I looked back once. Marco had placed his hand on Jack's shoulder. "East Hall," he said. "I know the route." Everything I had said was happening. And still Jack did not look at me. Victor pulled me into the corridor hard enough to make the tray shake. Beneath the wet napkin, something small clicked against the porcelain cup. Victor heard it. His grip tightened. His eyes dropped to the tray, then to the towel, then to my apron pocket. I did not know what had clicked. I only knew Victor suddenly looked less interested in firing me and more interested in searching me. He shoved me into the kitchen office and slammed the door. The room was small, bright and airless, with a desk, a broken filing cabinet, a schedule board covered in red marker, and security screens showing different parts of the restaurant in grainy black and white. One screen showed the Marigold suite emptying into confusion. One showed the main stair blocked by the 2 restaurant security men. One showed the service hall near the east corridor. On that screen, Jack Moretti was walking beside Marco Voss, and Marco's hand was still on his shoulder. My stomach went cold. "Put the tray down," Victor said. "If I'm fired, I can leave." "You leave when I get what you're carrying." My heart kicked once. "What am I carrying?" Victor's mouth tightened. "Do not play stupid with me." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Then put the tray down." "No." His face changed. The cruelty was still there, but now fear stood behind it. On the security monitor behind him, Jack and Marco disappeared into the east corridor. The camera did not reach the blind corner. Victor stepped closer. "What did you hear?" "Nothing." "What did you tell him?" "That you're a terrible manager." His hand shot out and grabbed my burned wrist. Pain flashed white at my arm. I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted blood, but I did not cry out. I would not give him that sound. "What did you tell Jack Moretti?" Victor whispered. "You should be more worried about what Marco told you to do," I said. His grip tightened. "You don't know anything." "Then why are your hands shaking?" His eyes flicked toward the tray. "Give me the towel." "Why?" "Because it belongs to the restaurant." "A wet towel?" "Everything in this building belongs to this restaurant." "Then deduct it from my last check." His eyes went flat. That was the wrong answer. He reached for the tray. I shifted sideways, and the wet napkin slid closer to my hand. I did not know what was inside it. I did not know whether it was proof or trash. But Victor wanted it badly enough to hurt me for it, and that meant it mattered. I pulled the napkin off the tray and shoved it into my apron pocket. Victor's eyes followed the movement. Now I knew. "Give it to me," he said. "No. Brave girls get hurt faster." I looked at his hand around my wrist. "Then you should stop hurting them." I swung the tray upward with my other hand. The edge hit his forearm hard enough to make him release me. A porcelain cup slid off and smashed against the floor. Coffee-soaked linen fell across his polished shoes. Victor cursed and grabbed for me again. I ducked around the desk, grabbed the heavy tape dispenser, and threw it at his chest. He blocked it with his arm, but the movement gave me 1 second. 1 second was enough. I pulled open the office door and ran into the service hall. The alarm screamed overhead. Staff members hurried past with towels, trays, and lies. Someone shouted about smoke near the ovens, but I smelled none. At the far end, the east corridor swallowed sound. I ran toward it. My shoe slapped unevenly against the tile. My wrist burned. My apron pocket bounced against my hip with the hidden piece inside. Behind me, Victor shouted my name, but the alarm broke it into pieces. Then a gunshot cracked through the service hall. The sound stopped me so suddenly my shoulder hit the wall. For 1 second, everything inside me wanted to turn around. I was a waitress. I had no weapon, no training, no powerful name. My child was asleep 2 blocks away, probably under the blue blanket Ruth had knitted for him, one small hand still holding the broken robot he refused to throw away. He was still little enough to believe his mother could fix anything if she had enough light, enough patience, and the right tiny silver piece. I thought of Ethan leaving because he said he could not spend his life pretending to desire a woman he pitied. I thought of my father looking at me and my child and saying a divorced woman with a son was already a burden, and a heavy one was a life sentence. I thought of Ruth finding me on a bus bench that night, wrapping her coat around my child's feet, and saying, "My son failed you, Lily. I will not let him fail his child, too." Ruth did not save me. I survived, but she stopped making survival harder, and sometimes that is the greatest kindness a person can offer. I had made one promise over my little boy's sleeping head. He would never learn from me that a woman must beg to be respected. So when that gunshot cracked through the hall, I thought of running. Then I thought of the lesson I would carry home if I ran while men died for a lie. No, I was not running back because Jack Moretti deserved me. I was running back because truth deserved someone. I moved toward the East Hall. The corridor narrowed after the linen room, then turned sharply toward the old private exit. The camera above the turn sat too high, exactly the way Marco's plan needed it to. A blind spot. At the end of it, Jack stood with his back near the emergency door. Marco stood in front of him with a gun in his hand. A traitor guard stood to Jack's left, aiming at his ribs. Another man stood behind Marco. Rocco was pinned farther back near the stair end, by the restaurant security guard holding a fire extinguisher in one hand and a pistol in the other. Jack had no gun drawn. His right sleeve was still damp from coffee. His face was calm, but calm did not mean safe. Marco's smooth smile was gone. Without it, he looked older, hungrier, almost relieved. "You came anyway," Marco said, "even after the waitress ruined your sleeve." Jack's voice was low. "You put your hand on my shoulder. And you followed." Marco smiled. "That was always your weakness, Jack. You mistake loyalty for love. I knew if I touched your shoulder and told you I knew the route, you would come just far enough to understand before you died." Jack's eyes moved once toward Rocco, measuring distance. Marco noticed. "No, let him watch. Let him tell the others I looked you in the face." "Why?" Jack asked. The word was quiet, and somehow that made it worse. Marco's jaw tightened. "My father died for your life. Do you know what they gave me for his blood? A room in your house. A chair behind your father. Then a chair behind you. I was raised close enough to touch the crown, but never close enough to wear it." Jack's face changed then. Not fear, pain. "You were my brother." Marco's mouth twisted. "No. I was your father's debt, and you paid me with trust instead of power. I would have given you anything, except the only thing I wanted. The family?" Marco's eyes hardened. "The throne." My eyes moved around the corridor, searching for anything useful. A laundry cart stood near the linen room, stacked with folded tablecloths and silver covers. A bucket of cleaning solution sat beneath it. A metal tray rack leaned against the wall. No gun, no miracle. Just restaurant things. But restaurant things were what I knew. Marco lifted his gun slightly. "Once you are dead, Rinaldi takes the blame. Your men go to war. His men defend themselves. By sunrise, I step in as temporary trustee to protect Moretti roots from collapsing. Emergency authority. Clean signature. Clean story," Jack said. "Clean. Clean enough." Marco's voice sharpened. Victor triggers the alarm. The stair gets blocked. "You go east. Rinaldi's men are seen moving. The judge has your signature. The businessmen remember what I tell them to remember. Once you are dead, no one argues with paperwork." "The official pen was damaged," Jack said. For the first time, Marco's face tightened. "Victor is handling it." "Is he?" Marco's gaze shifted past Jack and found me in the shadows. For half a second, no one else moved. Jack saw Marco see me, and his eyes changed. The traitor guard began to turn. I grabbed the laundry cart with both hands and shoved. Pain tore through my burned wrist, but the wheels broke free. The cart slammed into the guard's knees just as he fired. The shot went wild, exploding into the wall above Jack's shoulder. Rocco moved like something released from a cage. He drove his elbow into the restaurant security man's throat, ripped the pistol from his hand, and swung him into the wall. Jack dropped low and kicked the tray rack into the second guard's legs. Metal crashed across the corridor. Marco cursed and aimed at me. I ducked behind the laundry cart as another shot tore through folded tablecloths. Silver covers clattered across the floor. I grabbed the bucket from beneath the cart and threw it across the tile. Cleaning solution spread under Marco's polished shoes. He slipped half a step. That was enough. Jack closed the distance and caught Marco's gun wrist before he could fire again. The two men hit the wall hard. Marco was older, but hatred made him strong. Jack was faster. But he was fighting a man he had once called brother, and that hesitation cost him. Marco drove his knee into Jack's side. Jack grunted. Rocco was still dealing with the guard near the stairs. The traitor guard I had hit with the cart grabbed my ankle. I kicked backward blindly, my heel striking his face. He cursed and loosened his grip. I scrambled away, grabbed one of the fallen silver covers, and swung it at him. The sound it made was ugly and hollow, nothing like the graceful courage people write about in stories, but he went down. Marco and Jack crashed against the emergency door. The gun skidded across the floor toward me. I froze. I had never held a gun. I did not want to. Before I could move, Victor appeared at the far end of the corridor. His face was red, his hair disheveled, and his eyes went straight to my apron pocket. "Lily!" he shouted. Marco looked toward Victor. That mistake finished him. Jack used the distraction and slammed Marco's wrist against the doorframe until the gun dropped. Rocco reached them a second later, putting one knee into Marco's back and forcing him down. "Don't kill him," Jack said. Rocco's face showed what he thought of that order, but he obeyed. Victor started backing away. I stood, breathing hard, my wrist shaking, the wet napkin heavy in my pocket. Marco laughed from the floor, even with Rocco's knee in his back. "You still have nothing." A waitress heard something. A frightened woman ran into a corridor. "That is not proof." Jack looked down at him. "No, but your failed trap is." Marco's smile thinned. Jack turned slowly toward Victor. "Tell them why you sent me east." Victor's face went pale. "I didn't." Jack took one step toward him. "Tell them why the main stair was blocked." "I don't know." "Tell them why those men carried fire extinguishers to a stair with no fire." Victor swallowed. Marco snapped, "Shut your mouth." Jack did not look away from Victor. "He will bury you first, Victor. You were never his partner. You were his loose end." Victor's eyes flickered toward Marco. Marco's face had gone cold, and in that second, Victor understood what cowards always understand too late. The man he had served would not save him. Jack's voice lowered. "You can tell the judge what happened, or you can die protecting a man who already planned to erase you." The judge and two lawyers had reached the end of the corridor by then, pulled there by the gunshots and shouting. Enzo stood behind them with two of his guards, his expression hard and furious. Victor looked at the judge, then at Enzo, then at Marco. His mouth opened once before sound came out. "He told me to trigger the alarm after the signature," Victor said. Marco cursed. Victor spoke faster now, as if the words were running because fear had finally broken the lock. "The main stair had to be blocked. I had to send Mr. Moretti east. Marco said Rinaldi would take the blame. He said the signature only had to stand long enough for the emergency clause." Silence fell so hard I could hear my own breathing. Enzo's face changed first, not with surprise, but with insult. "You were going to put his murder on me." Marco said nothing. His silence was worse than denial. Jack looked at me then. "What did Victor want from you?" I pulled the wet napkin from my apron pocket and opened it carefully. A tiny silver verification piece lay inside, sticky with coffee. No bigger than the missing part from one of my little boy's broken robots. "I don't even know what this is," I said, "but Victor wanted it badly enough to hurt me for it." The lawyer stepped closer, pale and shaking. "That is the verification piece from the official signing pen." The judge stared at it. "Without it, the signing record is incomplete." The lawyer nodded. "The agreement cannot be certified clean. It has to be reviewed." Jack looked at Marco. "So we have Victor's confession, a fake alarm, blocked security, your gun in the east corridor, Rinaldi standing alive and framed, and a damaged signing record." Marco's face lost color. Jack's voice lowered. "Your clean story died the moment you trusted a coward and ignored a waitress." For years, men like Victor had survived because women like me were not believed unless proof arrived wearing a suit. carrying a title or standing beside power. Tonight, proof arrived in pieces. A fake alarm, a blocked stare, a brother with a gun, a coward finally speaking, and a tiny silver part carried in the apron pocket of the woman they thought was too invisible to matter. Jack turned toward me. His eyes moved over my face, my hands, my burned wrist. Something dark crossed his expression. I stepped back before he could come closer. "You didn't believe me," I said. Jack did not look away. Not enough. The honesty hurt more than a lie would have. "I believed the pattern," he said. "I believed enough to warn Rocco with a signal. I believed enough to walk into that hall ready. But I did not believe enough to tell you. I let you leave that room thinking I had chosen Marco over your warning." "You did choose him," I said. His face tightened. "For 1 minute too long, and you paid for that minute." Victor made a desperate sound. "This is ridiculous. She destroyed a private signing, attacked security, stole property from the table. She belongs to this restaurant until I decide what charges to file." Jack's head turned slowly toward him. "Say that again." Victor should have stopped. Pride makes stupid men brave at the wrong time. "She is mine to discipline." The air changed. Jack stepped between Victor and me. His voice was low, but every person heard it. "No man in this building touches her again. She stands where she chooses." The words reached something tired inside me. Protection was not ownership. It was not a claim. It still frightened me because powerful men often change the names of cages. But Jack turned slightly toward me, as if even that protection needed my answer. "Do you want me to step away?" he asked. The question almost broke me. After a night of men grabbing my wrist, my arm, my tray, my time, my silence, he asked. My throat tightened. "Not yet," I said. He nodded once and faced Victor again. "Take him out." Jack's men moved. Victor tried to pull away, but without fear to hold other people in place, he was only a man in a tight vest. As they dragged him past me, he leaned close enough to hiss. "You think he sees you now? Men like that only notice women when they are useful." I looked at him, at the smallness in his eyes, at the ruins of his power. "Maybe," I said, "but you made the mistake of thinking useful meant worthless." His face twisted, and then he was gone. Bianca stood near the service door with 2 other staff members. Her face was pale, one hand pressed to her mouth. "Lily," she whispered. "I didn't know. I wanted to be generous. I wanted to say it was fine, that fear makes people small, that I understood. But I was tired of women being asked to soften the edges of what others had done to them." "You knew enough to look away," I said. Her eyes filled. I was scared he would turn on me next. I looked toward the hall where Victor had disappeared, then back at her. "Then be scared and still tell the truth. That is where courage starts." She nodded slowly, as if the words hurt because they were deserved. The next hour passed in pieces. Jack's men secured the restaurant. Enzo Rinaldi was held in the Marigold suite until Victor's confession, and Marco's attack cleared his side of the trap. He did not thank me. Men like Enzo did not thank waitresses. But when he left, he paused near the service door, looked at me once, and gave a small nod. In his world, that was almost a speech. The judge reread the damaged signing record 3 times with shaking hands. The lawyers made urgent calls. The businessmen suddenly remembered other rooms they needed to be in. Marco Voss was taken away without another word. His silence did not look powerful anymore. It looked empty. Rocco brought me a clean bandage and stood beside the sink while I ran cold water over my wrist. He did not speak for a long time. Finally, he said, "That was stupid." I looked at him. "You are welcome." His mouth almost moved. "Also brave." I was afraid the whole time. That is usually when brave counts. I dried my wrist carefully. Jack stood near the service door speaking to the judge, but his eyes came back to me more than once. Not possessive, not hungry. Checking. Learning. Each time I caught him, he looked away first, as if he understood that after tonight, being watched without permission might feel too close to being trapped. When the worst of the chaos ended, I took off my apron and folded it over my arm. Jack stepped toward me, then stopped at a careful distance. His eyes moved to the bandage Rocco had wrapped around my burned wrist. "You should see a doctor." I looked toward the back door of the restaurant, toward the cold alley, toward the street that would take me to Ruth's apartment. "My wrist can wait," It shouldn't. My son can't. For the first time that night, something in Jack's face changed. Not shock exactly. Something quieter. You have a son? Yes, I said. He's 4. His name is Noah. He's asleep at Ruth's apartment, and when he wakes up, I need to be there. I am not staying in this building one more minute while my child is waiting for me. Jack went still. He did not ask where Ruth lived. He did not ask why Noah's father was not there. He did not ask questions he had not earned the right to ask. He only nodded once and said, "Then you go to your son." "I don't want charity," I said, because the night had taken too much from me and I needed at least that one wall standing. "Good," Jack said. "I don't give charity. What do you give?" He looked at the ruined private room, then back at me. "Repairs." That was better than debt. Debt made people owned. Repair meant something had been broken, and someone was willing to name it. "I'm not one of your repairs," I said. His eyes held mine. "No, you are not." I left through the back door with my coat pulled tight, and my broken shoe slapping the pavement. Rocco appeared beside the alley entrance holding a plain black box. Not for me, I told myself, but of course it was. "Shoes," he said. I stared at him. "What?" "Your right one is held together by tape. There is glass in the service hall. These are not payment. They are not a gift. They are safety." That sounded so much like something a man had practiced not to make wrong that I almost smiled. "Did Jack tell you to say that?" "No, I improved it." I took the box because walking 2 blocks on a broken shoe after everything else felt like pride trying to punish me. Inside were black flats, simple, soft, and my size. I changed near the back step while Rocco stood facing the other way with the seriousness of a soldier guarding a border. "Thank you," I said. "Boss said you don't like being bought." "Smart man." "Learning man," Rocco said. I carried my broken shoe in the box and walked to Ruth's apartment. Ruth opened the door before I knocked twice. Her gray hair was loose around her face, and worry had already found her eyes. "Lily?" I stepped inside and saw Noah asleep on the couch, one hand wrapped around his robot. My throat closed. Ruth saw the bandage on my wrist and the stain on my sleeve. "What happened?" I looked at Noah, then back at her. A long night, Ruth did not push. She never pushed where fear was still fresh. She only took my coat, touched my cheek, and said, "Then sit down before your legs remember they are tired." I sat beside Noah and watched him sleep. His robot's arm was still loose. The missing silver piece was still missing. For a strange second I wanted to laugh. A room full of dangerous men had nearly fallen apart because of a silver piece no bigger than the one my son believed would fix a toy. The world was ridiculous. The world was cruel. The world was sometimes saved by women nobody thought to ask. 3 days later, the Marigold Room reopened under new management. Victor Hale's name vanished from the schedule board like it had never been there, Bianca testified. The restaurant security men disappeared into whatever consequences men like Jack arranged when the law was too slow and the streets were too fast. Marco Voss did not appear in public again. The paper said a private business dispute had delayed a dock agreement. The city kept moving. Most people never knew how close it had come to burning. I did not return to the Marigold Room. Not because I was afraid. Because I had no interest in being grateful to a place that only respected me after powerful men heard Victor confess. I found work at a smaller cafe owned by an older woman named Mrs. Alvarez, who paid on time, fed her staff before long shifts, and told rude customers they could drink coffee elsewhere if kindness was too expensive for them. I liked her immediately. My wrist healed slowly. Noah colored little stars on my bandage and told Ruth his mother had fought a bad machine. I did not correct him completely. Some machines are made of metal. Some are made of men, silence, and rooms where nobody listens. On the 7th morning, Jack Moretti walked into the cafe. The whole room seemed to notice him, even without knowing his name. He wore a dark coat, no guards inside, though I saw Rocco through the front window pretending to be interested in the bakery display. Jack did not walk to the counter like a man claiming territory. He waited behind 2 customers, hands visible, eyes lowered enough not to frighten Mrs. Alvarez. When it was his turn, I looked at him over the register. "Coffee? If you are willing to pour it. I pour for paying customers. Then I'll pay." Mrs. Alvarez looked from him to me with the sharp attention of a woman who had lived long enough to identify trouble by posture alone. "Lily?" she asked. "It's fine," I said. Jack heard the caution in my voice and did not pretend not to. I poured his coffee into a white ceramic cup and set it on the counter. "Anything else?" "5 minutes," he said. "Only if you choose." I could have said no. He would have left. I believed that, and believing it made the choice harder. I took my break and sat across from him at the small table near the window. For a while, neither of us spoke. Outside, Rocco stared at a croissant like it might confess something. Jack looked at my wrist. "How is it?" "Healing. I'm sorry." "For which part?" He did not flinch. "For not believing you enough." My throat tightened. "That is a very specific answer." "It should be. General apologies are what men use when they want forgiveness without memory." I did not answer. He lowered his eyes to the cup. "I believed the pattern. I believed enough to prepare. But I did not believe enough to tell you. I let you think I had chosen Marco over your truth." "You did choose him," I said. "For 1 minute too long," he said. "And you paid for that minute." That silence sat between us for a long time. It did not fix anything, but it told the truth. That was a start. "Your son?" he asked carefully. I studied his face for any sign of ownership, pity, or calculation. "I found none. Safe," I said. "With Ruth." "Good." He did not ask to meet him. He did not ask where he lived. He did not pretend he had a right to know more. That was the first thing he did right after doing so much wrong. "I am not asking for a place in his life," Jack said. "I am asking for the chance to become the kind of man you would not be afraid to let near it." That was the closest thing to romance I could handle from him then, because it was not a claim. It was a request tied to behavior. I leaned back in the chair. "You understand I am still angry?" "Yes." "You understand anger does not mean interest?" "Yes." "You understand 1 cup of coffee is not a promise?" "Yes." He nodded after each answer as if receiving instructions before work. That, more than anything, made me believe he might actually hear me. When Jack stood to leave, he did not reach for my hand. He did not ask what tomorrow meant. He did not tell me I belonged anywhere except where I already stood. He only said, "If I came back another day, would that be unwelcome?" I thought about Victor, about Bianca, about Ethan, about my father's closed door, about Ruth wrapping her coat around Noah's feet at a bus stop years ago, about the hall, the gunshot, the silver piece, and the way men like Marco believed women like me existed below the level of consequence. Then I looked at Jack. "No," I said. "Not unwelcome." That was all he got. That was enough. He nodded once, left money on the table for coffee he had already paid for twice in other ways, and walked out with Rocco behind him. Jack came back the next week, then the next. Not every day, never enough to make the cafe feel surrounded. Sometimes he ordered coffee and left. Sometimes he sat for 5 minutes. Sometimes he asked about Noah without asking to meet him. Sometimes he said nothing at all, and I learned that silence could be respectful when a man was not using it as punishment. The first time he met Noah, it was an accident, or at least it was close enough to one that I allowed it. Ruth brought Noah to the cafe near closing because her knees were hurting, and the bus was late. Noah carried his broken robot under one arm, the one with the loose leg and missing joint. Jack was standing outside near the window, waiting because he had learned not to enter when I was busy. Noah saw him before I could explain anything, and walked straight up to him with the confidence only children and kings seem to have. "Are you the man from Mom's coffee story?" he asked. Jack froze like he had faced weapons with less fear. He looked at me first, silently asking permission to answer. I nodded. "I hope I'm not the worst part of it," Jack said. Noah considered that. "Mom said the bad machine broke. Your mother helped break it." Noah lifted his robot. "Can you fix machines?" Jack looked at the robot as if it might be more complicated than the entire dock agreement. "Some? This one needs a silver joint," Noah said. "Mom says broken things still work if you find the right small piece." Jack's eyes moved to mine. He understood then. Not all of it, but enough. The silver piece had never been only about the pen. It had been about a little boy who believed broken things deserved patience, and a mother who had carried that belief into a room full of men who thought she was nothing. "I can try," Jack said carefully, "but only if your mother allows it." Noah turned to me. "Can he try?" I looked at Jack. He did not look smug. He did not look like he had won anything. He looked like a man being invited into something fragile and aware that one wrong move would break it. "He can try," I said, "but he has to give it back even if he cannot fix it." Jack accepted the robot with both hands. "Agreed." Rocco, standing near the car, muttered, "I know a better repairman." Noah pointed at him. "Then he can help." Rocco looked at Jack. Jack looked at me. I smiled despite myself. "Looks like you have been hired." That became the beginning. Not flowers, not diamonds, not big promises, just small permissions earned slowly. Jack and Rocco found an old toy repairman who made a tiny silver joint for Noah's robot. Jack did not bring it to me like a gift meant to impress. He came to the cafe 2 weeks later, placed the repaired robot on the counter, and said, "Noah asked me to try. This belongs to him." I took the robot and tested the leg. It moved. Smoothly. For a moment my throat closed. "How much?" I asked. Jack's face softened. He paid with a drawing. "Jack, I'm serious." He pulled a folded paper from his coat pocket. Noah had drawn a robot with 3 arms, one of them labeled Rocco. I laughed before I could stop myself. Jack watched me like the sound mattered. After that, he learned slowly. He fixed a robot badly and let Noah laugh at him. He sent Ruth a car for her doctor appointment only after asking me first. And when I said no the first time, he did not argue. The second time, Ruth herself said yes because her knees were hurting and pride had never paid a medical bill. Jack learned Noah liked pancakes shaped like broken gears. He learned Ruth hated lilies because they reminded her of funerals. He learned I did not like being touched from behind. He learned I hated mirrors on days when Ethan's words came back too loudly. He did not fix those days. He stayed gentle around them. Months passed. The city kept moving. The Moretti name stayed dangerous. But around me, Jack learned to lower his voice. He still lived in a world of guards, debts, and men who made decisions in rooms without windows. I never pretended that did not frighten me. But he never asked me to pretend. "I cannot promise you a life without danger," he told me once while Noah slept on Ruth's couch after a fever. "Then don't," I said. "I would rather hear the truth." "Then the truth is this," he said. "My world has danger, but my home does not have to be a place where you beg to be heard." That was the first time I let him hold my hand. 10 months after the Marigold Room, Jack asked me to marry him in the back garden of Ruth's apartment building. Not in a restaurant, not in front of his men, not with cameras or roses or music loud enough to force an answer. Noah had chalk on his hands. Ruth sat on a folding chair, pretending not to cry before anything had even happened. Jack stood in front of me with no ring box visible at first. "I have asked Ruth's permission to ask in her garden," he said. "I have asked Noah whether he would be angry if I loved his mother for the rest of my life." My breath caught. "What did he say?" Noah shouted from behind the tomato plants. "I said only if he still fixes robots after!" Jack almost smiled. He negotiated very well. I looked at Jack. "And me?" He reached into his pocket, but he did not open the box yet. "You are the only one who can answer." "Then ask." He did. No speech about saving me. No promise that his love erased my past. No claim over my body, my son, my name, or my choices. He only said, "Lily Bennett, will you let me spend my life proving that your truth will always be heard before my pride?" I cried before I said yes. Not because I needed a powerful man. Because for the first time, power had knelt without asking me to shrink. The wedding was small because I wanted it small. Sunlight filled the garden behind an old stone chapel that Ruth loved. There were white chairs, soft music, a table of simple food, and more security than most brides would notice. But Jack kept them far enough back that the day still felt like ours. I stood in a room behind the chapel wearing a dress I had almost refused to buy. It was not the kind of dress women like Bianca wore in bridal magazines. It did not hide all of me. It shaped around my waist, my stomach, my hips, the softness I had spent years trying to apologize for. My hands trembled as I looked in the mirror. For a moment, I heard Ethan's voice as clearly as if he stood behind me. "You don't look like the woman I married." Then my father's voice followed. "A divorced woman with a son is already a burden, and a heavy one is a life sentence." My hand moved to my stomach before I could stop it. This body had carried Noah. This body had worked double shifts. This body had stood in restaurants where men looked through me until they needed something. This body had burned, run, fought, lifted my son, fed him, held him, protected him. And still some part of me wanted to ask the mirror for forgiveness. The door opened slightly, then stopped. Jack's voice came from outside. "May I come in?" Even now, he asked. I wiped my cheek. "Yes." He stepped in and stopped like the room itself had warned him to be careful. He wore a black suit, but not the kind he wore to make men afraid. This one was simple, formal, human. His eyes found mine in the mirror, then moved once over the dress, not with hunger, not with judgment, but with a kind of quiet reverence that made me look away first. "Do I look all right?" I asked. His face changed. No, my heart dropped. He stepped closer, slowly, leaving space for me to stop him. "You do not look all right," he said. "You look like a woman no man had the right to make ashamed." The tears came so fast I hated them. "Jack, may I?" he asked, his hand hovering near my waist. I nodded. He touched me gently, not hiding the softness, not avoiding the place I had covered with my own arms for years. His palm rested over the curve of my stomach like it was not something to forgive. "This is not something I accept because I love you," he said quietly. "This is part of why I understand you. This body carried your son, your hunger, your fear, your work, your truth. Ethan was too small to honor it. I am not." I broke then. Not loudly. Not beautifully, just honestly. Jack did not rush to fix my tears. He stood with me through them. He looked at me after Noah, I whispered, like I had become less. Jack's hand stayed steady. Then he did not know how to count. I laughed through the tears because it was such a strange answer. He looked at me in the mirror. "I see more, Lily, not less." Ruth knocked once and came in without waiting, because Ruth had earned that right. She saw my face, saw Jack's hand at my waist, and pointed at him with shaking fingers. "If you make her cry badly, I will ruin your wedding." Jack stepped back immediately. "Yes, ma'am." Ruth looked at me. "Good tears?" I nodded, and she cried harder than I had. Noah burst in 5 seconds later, holding the ring pillow upside down. "Everyone is waiting, and Rocco says I can't test the rings on my robot." "Rocco is right," I said. Noah sighed like all adults had failed him. Jack crouched in front of him. "Today, the rings stay on people." Noah looked at him seriously. After today, we negotiate." That satisfied him. The ceremony began under clear daylight. Ruth sat in the front row with a handkerchief twisted in both hands. Mrs. Alvarez sat beside her, proud as if she had raised me herself. Bianca came too, quiet and respectful, no longer polished like a weapon, but softer, changed by the courage she had once borrowed too late. Rocco stood behind Jack, face expressionless, eyes suspiciously bright. Noah walked down the aisle with the rings, holding the pillow in both hands like it contained evidence in a trial. When I reached Jack, he did not look at me like a man receiving a bride. He looked at me like a man being trusted with something he knew he had not created and did not own. The vows were simple until Jack turned slightly toward Noah. He had asked me first. He had asked Noah too. Still, seeing him do it made my chest ache. Jack knelt in front of my son, the Mafia Boss who made grown men lower their voices, now eye level, with a 4-year-old boy holding a crooked ring pillow. "Noah," he said, "I'm not here to replace anyone." Noah nodded seriously. "Because I have a dad." Jack's jaw tightened for half a second, but his voice stayed gentle. "Yes, and I am not here to take his name from you. I am here to promise that you and your mother will never have to beg for a place at my table. I promise to protect you without owning you. I promise to listen when you speak, and I promise to keep learning how to fix robots, even when Rocco is better than me." Noah looked at Rocco. "He is better." Rocco nodded once. "Obviously," people laughed softly. Ruth cried into her handkerchief. Jack looked back at Noah. "May I marry your mother?" Noah looked at me first. That mattered. He looked to me, not Jack. I nodded through tears. Noah turned back and said, "Yes, but she gets the biggest pancake." Jack's mouth curved. "Agreed?" Then Jack stood and faced me. His vows were not sweet in the usual way. They were stronger than sweet. "I do not promise you a life without danger," he said. "That would be a lie, and you have had enough men lie to make themselves look better. I promise you a life where your truth is heard before my pride. I promise your son will never be treated like extra weight. I promise no part of you will be hidden to make me comfortable. I promise that when the world calls you too much, I will remember that too much was exactly what saved my life." My hands shook as I gave my vows. "I do not promise to stop being afraid," I said. "I do not promise to forget the nights that taught me caution. But I promise not to punish you for the men who failed me, if you promise not to punish me for needing time. I promise to stand beside you, not behind you. I promise to tell you the truth even when it hurts. And I promise to remind you, whenever power makes you deaf, that a waitress once saved your life because she was listening." Jack's eyes shone then. He did not hide it. The ring slipped on. The kiss was gentle. Not a claim, not a performance, a beginning. Later, at the small reception, Noah fed cake to his robot first and got icing on its broken arm. Ruth danced with Rocco for 12 unexpected seconds, and then declared him too stiff to be useful. Mrs. Alvarez told Jack he was welcome in her cafe only if he continued to wait in line. Jack promised he would. Bianca hugged me carefully and whispered, "You look beautiful." I believed her this time. Not because the words were new, but because I was finally tired of fighting every kind thing someone offered me. Near sunset, Jack found me standing alone beneath a tree at the edge of the garden. The music was low. Noah was asleep in Ruth's lap, one hand still holding the robot Jack and Rocco had finally fixed together. Jack stood beside me without touching me until I leaned my shoulder against his arm. "Tired?" he asked. "Happy," I said. "It feels similar when you are not used to it." He looked toward Noah. He asked if we can build a robot with 3 arms. "Can you?" "No. Will you try?" "Yes," I smiled. "Then you'll fit in." Jack was quiet for a moment. "Do you ever regret spilling the coffee?" I looked at him, at the man I had once thought had chosen his brother over my truth. The man who had been wrong and admitted it. The man who had learned to ask before touching, wait before claiming, listen before deciding. "No," I said, "but I still have the scar." His eyes moved to my wrist. The burn had faded, but not vanished. "I know." "Good," I said. "Do not forget it." He took my hand and kissed the scar. Not dramatically, not as if pain was romantic, but as if memory deserved respect. Never. That night, when the guests were gone and Ruth had taken Noah upstairs, I stood again in front of a mirror, still in my wedding dress. For years, mirrors had been rooms where old voices waited for me. Ethan's disgust, my father's disappointment, Victor's insults, the world's quiet instructions to become smaller. But that night, when I looked at myself, I saw the same body, the same curves, the same stomach, the same arms that had carried trays and children and fear. Nothing magical had changed. And that was the miracle. I did not need to become a different woman to be loved differently. Jack came to the doorway and stopped. "May I?" he asked. I smiled. "You're my husband now." That was not my question. My throat tightened again, but this time the tears did not hurt. "Yes," I said. He came in and stood behind me, careful even in closeness. I looked at our reflection and thought of the first night in the marigold room, of candles, coffee, bloodless contracts, fake alarms, and men who believed no one listened to women who served coffee. Ethan had looked at my body and seen what changed. Jack looked at the same body and saw what survived. Victor had looked at my work and seen someone easy to blame. Jack looked at the same hands and saw steadiness. Marco had looked at me and seen an invisible waitress. The world had nearly burned because he was wrong. Noah murmured from the next room, half asleep. "Mom?" I stepped away from the mirror and went to him. "I'm here," I whispered, just as I had whispered on harder nights. But this time the words felt different. They did not only mean I had survived. They meant I had stayed. They meant I had fought. They meant my son would grow up knowing his mother did not bow her head because powerful men expected silence. Jack stood in the doorway, not entering Noah's room until I nodded. Then he came in, sat on the edge of the bed, and picked up the fixed robot from the blanket. Noah opened one eye. "Careful," he mumbled. Jack's mouth softened. Always. And for the first time in years, I believed that a broken thing could be repaired without pretending it had never been broken. I was not rescued by a powerful man. I was not made valuable by a ring, a name, or a mafia boss who finally learned to listen. I had already been valuable when I walked through the back door 10 minutes late with one broken shoe and a tired heart. I had already been valuable when no one looked. Jack had not made me worthy. He had only arrived late to a truth that had always been there. And when he reached for my hand in the quiet room where my son slept between old pain and new safety, I gave it to him, not because I needed saving, but because he finally understood that I had already saved myself.